A receptionist humiliates a simple cleaning lady without knowing she was the hotel owner's mother. Megan Phillips had built her career at the Miami oceanfront resort as the most efficient and elegant morning shift receptionist. At 28, she spoke 3 languages fluently and knew every detail of catering to the most demanding guests in Miami. That Monday in March, she had no idea her life would change completely because of a new cleaning staff member. Mrs. Martha Johnson had just been hired and was on her first day when she accidentally dropped a bottle of disinfectant right in the middle of the main lobby. "My goodness, how ridiculous!" Megan shouted, jumping out from behind the reception desk. "Look at the mess you've made in my lobby." The 62-year-old woman lowered her head and began picking up the broken glass shards with trembling hands. Some guests stopped to watch the scene, uncomfortable with the receptionist's aggressive tone. "I'm sorry, miss. It was an accident," murmured Mrs. Martha, her voice quiet but full of dignity. "An accident? You think that's an excuse?" Megan crossed her arms and glared at the cleaning lady with disdain. "This is a 5-star resort, not some dive bar in your hood." Brian Thompson, the shift manager, came running when he heard the commotion. He had been Megan's personal friend for years and always backed her decisions, no matter how questionable. "What happened here, Megan?" he asked, already irritated at the sight of Mrs. Martha kneeling on the floor. "This woman has no regard for anything. First day on the job, and she's already making a huge mess," Megan replied, pointing at the scattered shards. A well-dressed older gentleman with graying hair, a guest who had been staying at the resort for weeks, tried to intervene. He stepped forward and offered his hands to help Mrs. Martha up. "Please, let me help you," he said kindly. "Sir, don't trouble yourself," Megan cut in sharply. "She can clean up her own mess. That's what she's being paid for." Mrs. Martha lifted her eyes for the first time and stared directly at Megan. There was something in that gaze that unsettled the receptionist, a depth she couldn't decipher. But the feeling lasted only a few seconds. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. "Brian, bring me a nice hot coffee, please," Megan requested, returning behind the counter. "I need energy to deal with this kind of situation." Brian brought the steaming cup within minutes. Megan took a few sips and then, on purpose, spilled the rest onto the floor Mrs. Martha had just cleaned. "Oops, how careless of me," she said with a sly smile. "Looks like you'll have to clean it again." The cleaning lady watched the dark liquid spread across the polished marble. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say a word. She simply picked up the rag and began cleaning again, this time on her knees. The elderly guest who had tried to help earlier approached the reception desk with an indignant expression. "Young lady, that was very cruel of you. That woman could be your grandmother," he scolded, resting his hands on the counter. "Sir, please don't interfere in matters that don't concern you," Megan snapped, raising her voice. "I'm just teaching her how things work here." "Megan's right," Brian chimed in, standing beside the receptionist. "This employee needs to learn from day one that this is a place for serious people." Mrs. Martha finished cleaning and headed toward the service elevator, pushing her cleaning cart. Before entering, she looked at Megan one more time, but this time there was something different in her eyes, a quiet determination that the receptionist couldn't interpret. For the rest of the morning, Megan continued with her usual tasks, assisting guests and organizing reservations. But she couldn't shake the expression on Mrs. Martha's face. There was something familiar about it, though she couldn't quite place it. At lunchtime, Megan went down to the staff cafeteria and overheard some of the kitchen staff talking about the new cleaner. "Mrs. Martha seems like a very polite person," remarked Susan, one of the longest-working cooks. "She said she worked for years in private homes." "Yeah, but the receptionist was on her case first thing this morning," said Jennifer, another employee. "Poor woman on her very first day too." Megan walked up to them with her food tray. "You're talking about the new cleaner?" she asked, sitting down at the table. "I was just showing her how things work here. You can't go easy on people like that." "People like what, Megan?" Susan questioned, visibly annoyed. "She's an honest worker, just like us." "Oh, don't give me that protective act. You know very well some people don't fit the hotel's standards," Megan shot back, cutting her salad with sharp movements. Jennifer shook her head and changed the subject, but Megan noticed the two were still whispering to each other. She decided to dig deeper into who this Mrs. Martha was, stirring up so much fuss. That afternoon, Megan took advantage of a quiet moment at the front desk to check the HR system. She wanted to find out where the new cleaner had come from and who had recommended her. To her surprise, Martha Johnson's file was extremely basic. It only had the essentials: age, address, and a note that her hiring had been approved directly by upper management. There was no mention of who had referred her or what the hiring process had been. "How strange," Megan muttered, narrowing her eyes. Why would management take a personal interest in hiring a cleaner? She tried to access more details, but hit confidential files requiring higher-level passwords. That only fueled her curiosity and her irritation. Over the next few days, Megan started watching Mrs. Martha more closely. The cleaner always arrived promptly at 6 in the morning and left at 3 in the afternoon. She was discreet, efficient, and, much to Megan's annoyance, well liked by the other staff. Mrs. Martha had a habit of spending extra time cleaning the administrative areas. She straightened documents left on desks, organized drawers, and even corrected small mistakes she found in open spreadsheets. "Brian, don't you think it's weird that cleaner spends so much time handling important papers?" Megan asked on Thursday, pointing to Mrs. Martha cleaning the management office. "Now that you mention it, it is a little suspicious," Brian agreed, adjusting his glasses. "Maybe she's leaking information to competitors." "Exactly. Corporate espionage," Megan exclaimed, clapping her hands. "We have to do something before she steals hotel secrets." Brian thought for a moment. He'd already been under pressure from management over some irregularities in his department and couldn't afford more trouble. "I'll install extra cameras to monitor her," he decided. "If we find anything, we can fire her with cause." In the following weeks, Brian kept an eye on Mrs. Martha through the security cameras. What he discovered left him stunned. The cleaner did handle documents, but not to steal information. She corrected typing errors, reorganized important papers that were tossed around carelessly, and even jotted down improvement suggestions on sticky notes she discreetly left on desks. "This doesn't make sense," murmured Brian, watching the recordings for the 10th time. Megan stood beside him, equally confused. "Why would a cleaner do that?" she asked. "What kind of person bothers to fix other people's mistakes without getting anything in return?" The answer to that question came unexpectedly the following Friday. Brian had just discovered that some of his own administrative oversights had been corrected by Mrs. Martha, saving him from a scolding by the board. The fear of losing his job spoke louder. If the board found out a cleaner was fixing management's mistakes, Brian would be fired on the spot. He decided Mrs. Martha needed to leave the resort before she caused more trouble. "Megan, we're going to have to let the cleaner go," he announced Monday morning. "Finally," Megan cheered. "What's the reason?" "Incompetence. I'll say she's too slow and that guests have been complaining." On Tuesday, Brian called Mrs. Martha into his office. Megan made sure to watch the conversation from afar, a satisfied smile on her face. "Mrs. Martha, I regret to inform you we won't be able to continue your services," said Brian, avoiding direct eye contact. The cleaner stared at him silently for a few seconds before responding. "May I know the reason, Mr. Brian?" "Well, it's just... Some guests complained about your work, said you're too slow," he lied, nervously fiddling with his pen. Mrs. Martha nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting this conversation. "I understand," she said in her usual calm voice. "May I at least say goodbye to the colleagues who treated me well?" Brian agreed, relieved she didn't make a scene. Mrs. Martha left the room and went straight to the kitchen, where she found Susan preparing the afternoon coffee. "Susan, dear, I came to say goodbye," she said, hugging the cook. "Goodbye? What do you mean, Mrs. Martha?" "They let me go. Said the guests complained about my work." Susan was outraged. She knew the resort staff well and was aware Mrs. Martha was one of the most meticulous workers they'd ever had. "That's a lie. The guests only had good things to say about you," she protested. Mrs. Martha smiled sadly and whispered something in Susan's ear that made the cook turn pale. "It can't be true," murmured Susan, covering her mouth. "I just ask you to keep it a secret for now," Mrs. Martha requested. "When the time is right, everything will become clear." The news of the dismissal spread quickly among the senior staff. Everyone was furious, but one specific piece of information circulated in whispers through the service halls. Mrs. Martha was no ordinary cleaner. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Megan heard the rumors on Friday during lunch. Some of the older staff whispered that Mrs. Martha had a special connection to the resort's history, but no one wanted to give details. "What nonsense," Megan said to Jennifer. "You're making a mystery out of nothing. She was just a cleaner who couldn't do her job right." "Megan, you don't know this resort's history," Jennifer replied, shaking her head. "There are things that happened here you wouldn't even imagine." "What kind of things?" "The founder of this resort was a very special man. He believed every employee should be treated with respect, no matter their role. It was a beautiful philosophy." "And what does that have to do with the cleaner?" Jennifer hesitated before answering, as if weighing whether she should tell or not. "They say Mrs. Martha met that man personally, many years ago." Megan laughed loudly, drawing attention from others in the cafeteria. "Met him how? Was she his family's cleaner too?" "I don't know the details," lied Jennifer, clearly uncomfortable. "I just know she's not an ordinary person." The following Monday, Megan arrived at work feeling victorious. Mrs. Martha had officially been let go the previous Friday, and the resort was running smoothly without her, or at least that's what Megan thought. At 10 in the morning, a man in a dark suit and serious demeanor walked into the main lobby. Megan recognized him immediately. It was Richard Coleman, the regional director of the hotel chain. He rarely showed up unannounced. "Good morning, Mr. Coleman," Megan greeted with her most professional smile. "How can I help you?" Richard barely glanced at her, scanning the lobby as if searching for someone specific. "Where is Mrs. Martha?" he asked. Megan was confused. How did the regional director know a simple cleaner by name? "Mrs. Martha? The cleaning lady?" "That's right. I need to speak with her urgently." "Well, sir, she doesn't work here anymore. She was fired last week." Richard's expression changed completely. His friendly demeanor turned ice cold. "Fired? Who authorized that?" "Manager Brian, sir, for incompetence," replied Megan, starting to feel a knot in her stomach. Richard said nothing else. He walked straight to Brian's office, leaving Megan alone and extremely nervous at the front desk. The conversation in the manager's office lasted nearly an hour. Megan tried to listen through the door but could only hear raised voices. When Richard finally came out, Brian was pale and sweating. "Brian, what happened?" Megan asked as soon as the director left. "We're in trouble, Megan. Big trouble," he answered, loosening his tie. "Why? What's so special about that cleaner?" Brian hesitated before answering. He had just learned information that completely changed his perspective on Mrs. Martha, but he wasn't ready to tell Megan everything yet. "Richard said she was here on a special assignment from corporate, a kind of undercover internal audit." "An audit?" Megan's legs felt weak. "What kind of audit?" "To evaluate how staff behaves when they think no one's watching, how they treat each other and the guests." The truth began to click in Megan's mind, like puzzle pieces falling into place. The corrections in the documents, the silent observations, the dignity in the face of humiliation. Mrs. Martha was no ordinary cleaner. "My God, Brian, what have we done?" "The worst part is she reported everything to Richard, every detail of what happened from day one." Megan remembered the scene with the coffee spilled on purpose, the yelling in the lobby, the arrogant way she had treated the woman. If all of that had been observed and reported, are we getting fired? "I don't know, Megan. Richard said the case will be reviewed by corporate, but it doesn't look good for us." By Wednesday, Megan arrived at work with a crushing sense of helplessness. She had spent 2 sleepless nights imagining how she'd find another job with a termination for misconduct on her record. Around 11 in the morning, she saw a man enter the lobby who made her heart race. Someone she only knew from photos in the administrative halls, Michael Johnson, the owner of the resort. Michael was 45 and known as a fair businessman, but extremely strict about ethical standards. Megan had never spoken to him in person, only seen him from afar on a few occasions. To her complete surprise, Michael didn't approach her or Brian. He walked straight to an older woman sitting in one of the lobby armchairs, reading a newspaper. It was Mrs. Martha. Megan watched stunned as Michael hugged the cleaning lady with visible tenderness and emotion. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Mom, forgive me for all of this," Michael said, his voice choked. "Mom!" The word echoed in Megan's mind like thunder. Mrs. Martha was the owner's mother. "You don't need to apologize, my son," Mrs. Martha replied, stroking Michael's face. "You were right to want to uncover the truth about what's happening here. But it shouldn't have been so hard on you. I should have found another way. Michael, listen to me. If it hadn't been like this, we'd never have discovered how some employees behave when they think no one important is watching." Megan slowly stepped closer, still in shock. Other employees began gathering in the lobby, all equally surprised by the revelation. "Mrs. Martha," Megan stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't know." Mrs. Martha turned to her with the same calm expression as always. There was no anger or desire for revenge in her eyes, just deep sadness. "Megan, it's not true that you didn't know. You knew I was a human being who deserved respect, regardless of my job or social standing." The words hit Megan like a slap. She realized it truly didn't matter who Mrs. Martha was. What mattered was how she had chosen to treat an older, vulnerable person. "I want to apologize," Megan said, tears starting to fall. "I behaved horribly. Apologies are important, but they're not enough," Mrs. Martha replied. "The question is, what have you learned from this?" Michael watched the conversation in silence. He had planned this operation with his mother after receiving several anonymous complaints about the work environment at the resort. Mrs. Martha had insisted on participating personally to understand the situation. "Mom, you shouldn't have to go through this," Michael had told her when she proposed the idea. "We could hire a consulting firm." "Son, your father built this resort on respect for people. If that foundation is cracking, I need to see the problem with my own eyes." Now, weeks later, they had a clear diagnosis. The issue wasn't structural or procedural, it was cultural. Some employees had lost sight of the core values that should guide their actions. "Megan," Michael said, addressing the receptionist, "my mother and I have talked a lot about what happened here, about your behavior and Brian's." Megan lowered her head, expecting to hear she was fired. "Normally, behavior like yours would result in immediate termination," Michael continued. "But my mother has a different proposal." Mrs. Martha rose from the armchair and stood before Megan. "Young lady, I've seen that you have the skills to do your job well. The problem isn't your professional ability, but how you see other people." "Ma'am, I know I messed up badly," Megan sobbed. "I have no excuse for what I did." "I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking for solutions," Mrs. Martha said firmly. "Do you truly want to change, or do you just want to keep your job?" The question caught Megan off guard. It was deeper than she expected. I really want to change. These past few days have been the worst of my life. I couldn't stop thinking about how badly I treated you. Then I'll give you an opportunity you may not deserve, but one I believe can be transformative." Mrs. Martha looked at Michael, who nodded in agreement. "You'll participate in a human development program that I'll lead myself. For 3 months, you'll learn about empathy, respect, and servant leadership." "Servant leadership?" asked Megan, unfamiliar with the term. "It's when you lead by serving, not commanding. When you understand your role is to help others grow, not belittle them to feel superior." Michael explained that Brian had been transferred to another resort in the chain to a lower position. He had confessed that he let the situation with Mrs. Martha escalate because he was afraid of losing his own job. "And what about me, Mr. Michael? What's my punishment?" asked Megan. "Your punishment will be learning. It'll be facing your prejudices and discovering what kind of person you want to be from now on." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The Human Development Program began the following week. Mrs. Martha came to the resort 3 times a week, to lead sessions with Megan and other employees who had shown similar issues. In the first session, Mrs. Martha shared her story. "I married Robert Johnson when I was 22, she began, sitting in a small meeting room with 5 employees. He was a simple man who dreamed of building a resort where people would feel truly welcome." Megan listened closely, still processing the fact that she had humiliated the widow of the resort's founder. Robert always said the greatness of an establishment isn't measured by the luxury of its facilities, but by the humanity of its people. He believed that an employee treated with dignity naturally treats guests well. "How did you endure working here while being treated like that?" asked Amanda, one of the housekeepers also in the program. "Because I needed to understand where the problem was. If my husband were alive and saw what some employees had become, he'd be heartbroken." Mrs. Martha explained that she had worked as a maid her entire youth before marrying Robert. She knew exactly what it was like to be treated with contempt because of her social standing. "The difference is that now I had a choice. I could leave any time. But what about those who truly depend on these jobs? They don't have that option." Over the following weeks, Megan took part in empathy exercises, discussions about class prejudice, and hands-on training in compassionate service. The hardest part was when Mrs. Martha made her work a full day in housekeeping. "I want you to understand firsthand what it means to have a job society considers inferior," Mrs. Martha explained. Megan spent 8 hours cleaning bathrooms, making beds, and carrying heavy equipment. By the end of the day, her back ached, her hands were rough, and she was exhausted. "How was it?" Mrs. Martha asked. "Much harder than I imagined," Megan admitted, flexing her sore fingers. "And the worst part was some guests didn't even look at me, like I was invisible. Now you know how I felt on my first day here. Invisible to some, scorned by others." "Mrs. Martha, how were you able to forgive me?" Mrs. Martha was silent for a moment before answering. "Megan, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or accepting what happened. It means choosing not to let anger take over my heart. But I deserved to be fired. I deserved punishment." "Maybe so. But I believe more in the power of education than in the power of punishment. Punishment breeds resentment. Education brings transformation." Little by little, Megan began to change her perspective on work and relationships. She observed how Mrs. Martha interacted with all the resort staff, from managers to housekeeping assistants, always with the same respect and genuine interest. One day, during one of their sessions, Mrs. Martha shared how she had met Robert. "I worked in his family's home. I was very young and shy. Robert was an only child and was taking over his father's business." "Did you fall for him right away?" Megan asked. "Actually, he fell for me first," Mrs. Martha smiled. "He said I was the only person in the house who treated him like a normal person, not like a boss." "What do you mean?" "Robert was very shy and struggled with relationships. The other maids were always nervous around him. I talked to him normally, asked about his day if he needed anything." Megan began to understand that the relationship between Mrs. Martha and Robert had been built on mutual respect and equality, despite their social differences. "When he proposed, I told him I'd only accept if he promised we'd never forget where we came from," Mrs. Martha continued. "Promised we'd always treat the people who worked with us well." "And did he keep that promise?" "In 40 years of marriage, I never saw Robert disrespect an employee. When he passed 5 years ago, I promised I'd keep protecting that legacy." Megan's transformation didn't go unnoticed by the other staff. She began greeting everyone she crossed paths with during the day personally, from the gardeners to the managers. She learned the names of all the housekeeping staff and started treating them as co-workers. A defining moment happened in the 6th week of the program. A very important guest was causing a scene at the front desk, yelling at Megan because his room hadn't been cleaned on time. "This is unacceptable," the man shouted, slamming his fist on the counter. "I pay a fortune to stay at this resort and get third-rate service." The old Megan would have shifted all the blame to housekeeping, throwing someone under the bus to protect herself. But the new Megan reacted differently. "Sir, I take full responsibility for the issue," she said calmly. "I'll handle this personally and make sure it doesn't happen again." Instead of just calling housekeeping, Megan went up to the guest's room herself and helped clean it. She discovered there had been a scheduling misunderstanding. The maid responsible was covering 2 floors because a co-worker was out sick. "Your son would be proud of you," Jennifer told Mrs. Martha weeks later. "Megan's a whole new person." "She was always a good person," Mrs. Martha replied. "She just needed to learn to see it in others too." The official program lasted 3 months, but Mrs. Martha kept visiting the resort regularly. She had developed a real friendship with Megan and followed her professional and personal growth. One day, Michael called Megan into his office for an important talk. "Megan, I need to talk to you about your future here at the resort." Megan's heart raced. Even after all her growth, she was still afraid of being fired. "My mother told me about your progress these past months, how you've changed your leadership and relationships." "Mr. Michael, I just did what was right, what I should have done from the start." "Exactly. And that's why I want to offer you a new position." Megan was stunned. She didn't expect a promotion after everything that had happened. "We're creating a new department at the resort, Employee Well-being and Human Development. We want you to be the coordinator." "Me? But sir, after everything I did." "Precisely because of everything you've been through. You understand better than anyone how harmful prejudice can be and how important change is." The proposal was for Megan to develop humanization training programs for all resort employees and eventually for other locations in the chain. It would mean working directly with Mrs. Martha, who would become the company's official consultant. "I accept with great pride," Megan said, tears in her eyes, "but only if Mrs. Martha agrees to be my official mentor." 3 months later, Megan stood before an audience of 100 employees from different resorts in the chain. It was the official launch of the Hospitality Humanization Program. "My name is Megan Phillips, and I'm here to talk about the importance of treating everyone with dignity," she began, her voice steady and clear. Mrs. Martha sat in the front row, smiling proudly. "A year ago, I was the most efficient front desk clerk at this resort. I spoke 3 languages, knew every procedure, and served VIP guests flawlessly. But I had one serious problem. I didn't know how to treat my co-workers." Megan shared her full story, from the humiliation she inflicted on Mrs. Martha to the transformation she underwent. "I learned that greatness has nothing to do with job titles or salaries. It's about how we choose to treat the people around us, especially those who seem powerless to harm us." During the presentation, she explained the core principles she had learned from Mrs. Martha: unconditional respect, active empathy, and servant leadership. "Servant leadership doesn't mean being passive or submissive," Megan clarified. "It means using your influence to help others grow and thrive." At the end, Megan invited Mrs. Martha to the stage. "I want to introduce you to the woman who changed my life, and who can change yours too. Mrs. Martha Johnson, our new human development consultant." The audience rose in applause as Mrs. Martha gracefully approached the microphone. "Dear team," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "I spent 45 years in this industry alongside my husband. I've learned that true hospitality comes from the heart of each one of you." She looked directly at Megan before continuing. "Megan taught me something very important. It's never too late to change, never too late to grow, and never too late to become a better person. If she could transform herself, so can all of you." In the following months, the program expanded across the entire chain. Megan traveled the country leading trainings, and Mrs. Martha joined whenever possible, sharing her wisdom and experience. Their relationship had evolved from a painful confrontation to a deep, mutually enriching friendship. Megan became one of the most respected employees in the company, not for her technical skills, but for her ability to inspire positive change in others. A year after the program's launch, the Miami Oceanfront Resort received a national award for workplace excellence. During the ceremony, Michael gave special thanks to 2 people. "This award belongs to my mother, Martha Johnson, who taught us that values aren't optional in a family business, and it belongs to Megan Phillips, who proved that personal transformation is possible when we have the humility to learn." Megan stepped onto the stage to accept the recognition alongside Mrs. Martha. As they posed for photos, she whispered to her mentor, "Mrs. Martha, thank you for not giving up on me when I deserved it." "My dear," replied Mrs. Martha, squeezing her hand affectionately. I never give up on someone who shows a willingness to grow. That's the most important lesson my Robert taught me. At the end of the ceremony, a journalist asked Mrs. Martha what the hardest moment had been during her experience as an undercover cleaner. It wasn't being humiliated or disrespected, she answered thoughtfully. It was realizing that good people like Megan had lost their way because they lacked guidance and role models. And what was the most rewarding moment? Mrs. Martha looked at Megan, who was enthusiastically chatting with other staff about the program's upcoming projects. It was discovering that the human heart always has room for change when it finds the right environment to flourish. 2 years later, Megan was promoted to National Director of Human Development. Mrs. Martha remained her consultant and advisor, but now also as a personal friend and confidant. One Saturday afternoon, the two were having lunch together at a quiet restaurant in South Beach when Megan shared a reflection that summed up her entire journey. Mrs. Martha, sometimes I wonder how different my life would have been if that first meeting had gone another way. How so, dear? If I had been kind to you from the start, if I had offered help instead of humiliation. Mrs. Martha smiled and touched Megan's hand on the table. Megan, if that had happened, you would have been a polite person, but not the transformed person you are today. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to discover what we're truly capable of. You're not angry about what I did. My dear, anger is a feeling that consumes the one who feels it, not the one who caused it. I chose to turn that experience into learning and growth for both of us. Megan reflected on that answer. She had learned that forgiveness wasn't just a kindness from Mrs. Martha, but a conscious choice not to let negative events define her future. And now? What are your plans? Now, I'll keep doing what I've always done, planting seeds of kindness wherever I go, whether as a consultant, a mentor, or simply as someone who believes in the best in others. Can I keep learning from you? Megan, you don't need me as a mentor anymore. You've become a leader in your own right. But you can always count on me as a friend. That afternoon, walking along Miami Beach after lunch, Megan realized just how completely her life had changed. She had gone from being prejudiced and arrogant to someone who dedicated her career to nurturing humanity in others. The most remarkable part was that this transformation had begun with what seemed like the worst day of her professional life. The humiliation she had inflicted on Mrs. Martha had become the catalyst for her own evolution. Mrs. Martha, she said, stopping to watch the sunset, I'd like to make a promise. What kind of promise? I promise to carry on the work you and your husband started. I'll make sure the values of respect and dignity are preserved, not just in our resort, but everywhere I can make a difference. Mrs. Martha smiled and hugged Megan warmly. That's the greatest legacy you can leave the world, my dear. Robert would be so proud to know his philosophy lives on through people like you. As they walked back, Megan thought of all the others she had helped transform through the Human Development Program. Every employee who learned to value their colleagues, every manager who discovered the power of servant leadership, every receptionist who understood that true hospitality begins with mutual respect. Mrs. Martha, sometimes I feel like I still have so much to learn. And you always will, Megan. The day we stop learning is the day we stop growing. The humility to recognize we can always improve is what keeps our hearts open to new possibilities. 3 years after that dramatic first encounter in the hotel lobby, Megan and Mrs. Martha had become a well-known duo in the American hospitality industry. They led seminars, workshops, and organizational transformation programs for companies across the country. Their story had spread through articles in trade magazines and testimonials from employees who participated in their programs. Many companies began seeking their consulting services specifically because of the authenticity of their experience. You two prove that conflicts can be transformed into growth when there's genuine willingness to change, said an HR director during a seminar in Chicago. Exactly, Megan agreed. What matters isn't avoiding conflicts, but learning from them and using those experiences to build stronger relationships. Mrs. Martha added her perspective. In my 65 years of life, I've learned that people aren't born good or bad. They become what their environment and experiences allow them to be. Our responsibility is to create environments that bring out the best in everyone. During one of their last presentations together that year, they were asked what the greatest lesson of their journey had been. Megan answered first. "I learned that greatness isn't about the power you have over others, but the power you have to lift others up." Mrs. Martha finished the thought, "And I learned we should never underestimate the transformative power of a human heart when touched by truth and love." At the end of that presentation, a young woman in the audience asked a question that summed up the impact of their entire story. "Do you think this experience happened by chance, or was it meant to happen?" Mrs. Martha and Megan exchanged a glance and smiled. "I don't believe in accidents when it comes to human growth," Mrs. Martha replied. "I believe life puts us through the experiences we need to become who we're meant to be. And I've learned that the toughest encounters can become the greatest blessings of our lives," Megan added. "As long as we have the humility to learn and the courage to change." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of transformation and forgiveness. Do you believe Megan made the right choice by accepting change instead of just keeping her job? And Mrs. Martha, do you think she made the right decision by betting on education over punishment? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories.